Hello, my name is Barbara and I'm the teacher behind First Rate Tutors, which is a YouTube channel dedicated to creating GCSE and A Level videos, so revision videos for English and history. Now, I'm really excited to be collaborating with Lewis from Physics Online, and he sent me 5 questions to answer, both from a teacher's perspective and from a YouTuber's perspective. So let's get started. Now, the first question he asked me is, what inspired you to start creating videos on YouTube? Now, as I mentioned, I'm an English and history teacher, and the main reason why I started First Rate Tutors, the YouTube channel, which offers just lots of free revision videos, is because essentially when I was preparing my lessons, when I was preparing things, for example, lesser known plays by William Shakespeare, like Antony and Cleopatra, for instance, I would sometimes go online. Even teachers, you think that it's only students that go online to learn, but also teachers do. I would go online, try and find these summaries that are really helpful, and I simply couldn't find that much useful content, especially on lesser popular plays, lesser known novels, especially even other types of GCSE novels and A-level novels. So essentially, First Rate Tutors just basically, it was my solution. I just created videos which were the videos that I wish I could have found when I was looking for them. And these videos are both for teachers, so we have lots of other teachers who watch this, but of course, majority of our viewers are students who are doing their GCSE and A-levels, who just want a really helpful summary. And we have lots of different types of videos because of that. So really the main reason why I was inspired to start my channel is just to help other students find really useful content, but most importantly to also help other teachers find similar content. Now, the second question is, what are the main changes to the GCSE English language and English literature curriculum for students who are going to be going into Year 11 in September 2020? So of course, as I'm sure you're aware, because of coronavirus and quarantine, every student across the country lost valuable teaching time because obviously schools closed in March. And this is especially important for students who are currently in Year 10 going into Year 11 because they lost a lot of contact time with their teachers. Now, traditionally, in English literature, so the changes are going to be made when it comes to literature, students have to learn 4 areas. The first is a Shakespeare play. The second is a Victorian novel. The third is a post-1914 British literature play or text. And the fourth area is poetry. Now, Ofqual, which is the exams regulator, basically recognizes that, of course, these changes occurred, and they have decided that students will have to only do 1 Shakespeare play, and then out of the 3 remaining areas, they can choose 2 for either coursework or exams, depending on what your school decides to do for you. So instead of having to sit 4 areas in literature now, for students going into Year 11 for this year, they only have to sit 3 areas. So that's really the main change. However, do bear in mind that English language, where you don't necessarily have to memorize any books, that still remains the same. Now, the third question is, what's your most important piece of advice for students who are going to be preparing for their English GCSE exams? My main advice is start early. Start early, firstly, with reading. So as I mentioned, you're going to be learning 3 areas. Get started. It might feel daunting, it might feel boring, but actually English, unlike other topics such as sciences or maths, it's not very black and white where once you know a fact or a specific figure, that's all you need to know. No, when it comes to English, especially literature, you need to understand the meanings behind different texts, the kinds of questions that you might be questioned on in your exams or in your coursework. There's lots of layers to it. So with English, it's a very slow burn process, and the earlier you start, the easier it becomes. I would also suggest starting early as you read through chapters. So for example, if you read through each act for a Shakespeare play, or you read through each chapter for instance, a Victorian text, have your revision card summaries, right? These are the revision cards that we tend to use when, you have a month before your exams. No, start early on. Start even in September, October. As you're reading, jot down key quotes. Jot down the same things that you would have to do much later on, because again, bear in mind that you have lost a lot of valuable teaching time. So in some ways, you're really trying to go into a little bit of overdrive and do things a little bit earlier because you've lost so much valuable time. Now, as I've mentioned, this can be done. This is achievable, as long as also the final thing, and this is part of still starting early, is you create a revision timetable. Don't wait until December, and definitely don't wait until Easter next year to create a revision timetable. Again, you're part of a very special year where you've lost so much time, so you need to catch up. So make sure you start early. Now, the fourth question is, for students who are keen to study English at A Level, what's the major difference between studying English at GCSE versus A Level? And also, what are some of the main mistakes that they should try avoid making when they study English at A Level? Now, of course, as an English teacher, I'm very biased. I would absolutely encourage, if you're considering taking English at A Level, definitely go for it. However, the major thing to bear in mind is, number one, as opposed to GCSE English for language and literature, when it comes to A Level, it becomes way more technical, and English language and literature tends to be taught separately, so as a separate set of A Levels, because they cover different things. Now, English language, firstly, at A Level is essentially way more theoretical. You learn way more about the building blocks of language, how it came about. You even learn about how children learn language. It's very theoretical, and there's less books to learn. However, there's way more theories. However, English literature is more for the bookworms at A Level, because you have to read way more books, which are far more intensive, and there's a lot more content to cover. Plus, you also have to be aware of different critics. This is what other people who are academics have read the same book, and what they have to say about that. Now, the main key issue or the problem that students make, and I think this is not only for English language or literature A Level students, but also students across other A Levels, the main mistake they make when they get to A Level is they essentially expect the same level of support from the teachers as they had when they were at GCSE. Now, whilst this is obviously good to ask your teacher questions, actually, because you're becoming more academic, teachers will expect you to be more independent as learners. So whilst at GCSE, you're going to realize at GCSE, you're much more perhaps coddled. Teachers were much more direct in what you should be including in your writing. However, in contrast, at A Level, teachers will be helping, but they'll take a step back. They'll say, look, you need to go and figure that out for yourself, because you're becoming more of an academic. So make sure you don't expect teachers to hold your hand, and make sure you take responsibility for your learning at A Level. The fifth and final question is, what advice do you have for students going back to school in September? And of course, this is September 2020, after such a lengthy school closure, because if you think about it, the last time people were in school was in March 2020. Now, one thing I have felt from some of my students is a great deal of anxiety. When I've talked to them through our online lessons, which I've been helping them with, they feel really anxious about going back to school. They feel perhaps that, if they go back, they're going to feel very behind because they have not necessarily been keeping up with learning. They perhaps also feel anxious that, things might have changed in terms of their friendship group and the dynamics between their friends. So the big thing that I'm getting from some of my students is a strong sense of anxiety. Now, my advice is that, firstly, acknowledge that anxiety. You're feeling really scared. You're feeling really fearful about such a massive shift, right? Because going from being at home every single day or so many days during the week to now going back into a school routine, that is quite anxiety inducing. However, acknowledge that you feel anxiety, and realize that firstly, it's really normal. Hundreds of students across the country are feeling the same level of anxiety. Secondly, though, it's also about dealing with your anxiety in a healthy way. Now, before schools open, I would suggest try and pick up something that takes your mind off that anxiety. And in many ways, actually dealing with something by trying not to think about it is the worst way, because you're just going to think about it more. However, for instance, if you're a sporty person and you love sports, or for instance, you like going running, do more of that right now because you have the time for that. If you are somebody like me who's a bit more of a bookworm, use this time to read stuff that you otherwise don't feel you'd have had time for in school. Essentially, one way to deal with anxiety is to try and do things that you love, because that takes your mind off that thing that's bringing you anxiety. Secondly, obviously, once, the night before school, so that's probably the time where you're going to feel the most amount of anxiety, just try to, eat something that doesn't necessarily bring up your energy levels. So for example, try to avoid coffee, try to avoid sweets, eat healthy so that you can have a good night's rest, and just realize that once you get back into school, all of those things that you've created in your head which you think are really going to be really horrible, oh my gosh, when I go back I'm going to be so behind, you know, maybe this person who I was really close friends with, maybe things have changed. Actually, once you go back into school, you realize things are actually the same, and getting back into the routine is going to be the same. So make sure you deal with your anxiety in a healthy way. Use this time, it's still the summer holidays, so use this time to enjoy yourself and also to do things that you love and otherwise will not have time for once you go back to school in September. So those are all my answers for Lewis from Physics Online. I want to say thank you so much for this collaboration opportunity. I hope this video is going to go some way in helping students out with questions that they want answered from an English and history teacher's perspective. But also make sure you come over to First Rate Tutors. So just type in on YouTube First Rate Tutors and show us some love, and make sure you check out our videos, especially for English and history, as you get ready to go back to school. Thank you so much for watching.